Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story. Hello, readers! So it has been a hot minute since I did a reading recap episode, since the end of last year was full of just other things to talk about. But don't worry if you have gone through a bit of a withdrawal, because today I am sharing what I read in January and giving it to you straight as to whether I think they are books that you should read or books that you should just, quite frankly, skip. If you want to see which books I read to round out 2024, then you can check out my full reading list on shereadsromancebooks.com. And I will, of course, include that link in the show notes as well, so that you can see every book that I read in 2024. It was over 140. And my rating for them. Plus, if you click on the book cover, I linked to my review if I wrote one for that particular book. I also want to remind you that the 2025 Romance Book Reading Challenge has launched, so we are in it and having a lot of fun. For my annual reading challenge, we read one romance book each month that explores a different category of romance. For January, we read a contemporary romance. Gosh, that's a mouthful. And now for February, we are reading an erotic romance. New this year is also a weekly challenge for the Romance Book Reading Challenge if you want to up the stakes a little bit. My weekly challenges focus on an additional reading challenge prompt, as well as a romance book trope for you to explore for even more variety in the genre. I pull a card each week from my A Year of Reading Romance card deck for these weekly challenges, and I share them only in my newsletter, so make sure that you join my list if you want to know what these weekly romance book reading challenges are. And if you just want to create your own challenge on your own timetable, you can always purchase one of my A Year of Reading Romance card decks for yourself. It includes 52 playing card-sized cards with a romance category or trope on one end and a reading challenge prompt on the other. So you can shuffle up these cards, pull one out whenever you need help selecting a new book, or if you just want to add some fun into your reading life when you're just like, I'm not sure what I should read next. I really love this deck, and I think you will too. So check it out. So we just wrapped up our January 2025 book of the month for the She Reads Romance Books book club, which I'll talk about in this episode. And I will share what our February 2025 book of the month is, because it is fantastic and you're definitely going to want to read it. And then join us in the book club for our book club meeting to talk about it, as well as join for this month's author Q&A meetup on Zoom to talk about it with the author herself. I'm really excited for our meetings this month, so I hope you'll join in the fun. Okay, lastly, before we dive in, January was a big month because probably the biggest book of the year was released. Actually, I just read something online that it has had its biggest release for any book over the last 20 years, which I think is amazing. And Rebecca Yarros deserves all of the accolades and what's coming to her. So yes, you guessed it, Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros released in January, the third book in her Empyrean series that has romantasy readers and non-romantasy readers clamoring for this book and attending release parties at midnight to snag it. I mean, all the things. If you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you might have seen my post where I was not happy with Target because I had pre-ordered the deluxe exclusive hardcover edition in July. In July, people. How many months ago was that? When I really don't buy exclusive hardcovers myself, but I did for this one because I have the other two books in the series in hardcover. And I got a notice when I checked to see, like, when am I going to get this book, that it wasn't going to be delivered until January 27th. That was 6 days after its release. And I was like, what the heck? I was so annoyed, but it actually turns out the book got delivered on the 23rd. So a little bit earlier, but still, I mean, it should have been here at like even the 20th or the 21st in my mind. I was not happy, Target. But I'm just finishing up right now because I'm going slowly with it. One, because I'm loving it. It's so, so good. It's actually surpassing my expectations that I had for it. But I'm going slow because there's just so much happening, right? And so many details and people and places that I can't really fly through it like I normally read through books. So I'm not going to cover it in this episode, but I will hopefully talk about it in my next episode. I had actually hemmed and hawed about rereading Iron Flame prior to this book, but I ultimately just skimmed certain sections and reread the ending to kind of catch me up. 640 pages in the hardcover for Iron Flame was a lot to reread, and I just honestly wanted to get into Onyx Storm, if I'm being honest. And I'm glad I did because it's actually coming in at 544 pages in the hardcover. So she has a lot to say in this series, and I'm just so, so impressed. I'm really just so amazed how fantasy romance authors have just all the ideas to write 5+ books in a series, with each book being incredibly long. I mean, I don't understand how they come up with so much to write, but it's amazing. So, again, tune into my February reading list episode for my thoughts on Onyx Storm. But for every other book that I read in January, let's get to it with the first book being Yin Yang Love Song by Lauren Kung Jessen, which was on my most anticipated new romance books list for 2025 and which released this month on January 28th. I had read my advanced reader copy at the first of the month because I just loved what this book, at least according to its summary, was all about, and I just didn't want to wait for it. This was my first book by Jessen. And if you didn't know this about me, I am an acupuncturist by day and romance reader by night. So to see a book about a Chinese herbalist who works at a healing retreat center where she and her aunties do acupuncture and talk about traditional Chinese medicine, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to read this book. So Yin Yang Love Song is a story about Chinese herbalist Chrissy Hua Williams, whose family has a love curse, supposedly. So she's really not looking for love anymore, but she really wants to promote this new tea line for her family's business. But then she meets celebrity cellist and bad boy Vin Chow, who has a reputation as a heartbreaker. So he's about to go on tour with his brother. So he kind of has to build up on that reputation as a heartbreaker. So the two agree to sort of fake date so that he can break her heart and break up with her in return for helping to promote her new business. So though I had never read a book by Jessen before, as I said, I was so completely captivated by the traditional Chinese medicine element to this story. And that honestly was the best part about this book. I loved how she sprinkled in aspects of TCM theory, information about qi and acupuncture points, and how people use the medicine. I would totally book a trip to her family's inn if it existed in real life because Jessen made it sound like the most perfect oasis for self-care. But while I really enjoyed that aspect of the book, it's sort of where my enjoyment ended for this story. As a romance book lover, I'm of course all about the central love story, but I felt like this was really lacking. It seemed more like a cute women's fiction story that also dealt with a musician on the side. There really was no chemistry between Chrissy and Vin, nor a really sweet slow burn, which I was thought was sort of coming or where it was going, but there really was nothing happening between them, especially in the first half of the book. Even sort of the fake dating aspect of the story got kind of lost for me as they really didn't date or get to know each other. There were some like interesting events thrown in throughout the story, but they didn't really build on the relationship as I sort of expected or had hoped. I just needed more interaction between them to really kind of buy into any love connection. So, alas, I really did love the TCM aspect of Yin Yang Love Song. I think that was such a really cool differentiator about this book, but the romance just didn't quite hit the mark for me. Another book that I actually listened to this past January was a popular one, Is She Really Going Out with Him by Sophie Cousins. It was really fun listening to the audiobook because I just love the British accent of the narrator. I picked it up because it was a favorite for some in the She Reads Romance Books book club when we talked about our favorites of the year in December, and I'm always down for an enemies to lovers romance, which this sort of was. It follows columnist Anna Appleby, who is now divorced and raising 2 kids. The new man in the office, Will, completely rubs her the wrong way, but she finds herself competing against him for a column at the paper, which then has her pitching this idea where she is going to go out on dates with people, with whomever her kids choose. And she's going to then talk about the dates in her column about how to find somebody in real life, while Will's going to go on some dates, but do so while finding people through, traditional dating apps. It's super fun to see all the people that Anna ends up going on dates with and how she interacts with Will throughout the process. I will say this, I thought it was super cute and I enjoyed listening to it. Anna, however, she did kind of rub me the wrong way at times. She was kind of a jerk to Will at the beginning, and it really didn't let up. And he would kind of push her buttons too. So I kind of had a hard time seeing their connection, even though I knew that's where the story was going, right, at first. So, but as the story unfolded, I could see Will had this unrequited love, but the love story didn't quite necessarily fit for me at times. Would I recommend it? Absolutely, yes. It was super cute. Was it a favorite of mine? Not really, but I'm really glad I listened to it. Next up, I read our January 2025 She Reads Romance Books book club book of the month, which was Steal My Heart by Laura Pavlov. This was the first book to her new Rosewood Ridge series, for which she was, or I should say, will be releasing 5 more books in the series throughout this year. I mean, oh my gosh, this woman is amazing. We learned about her author journey and her writing schedule when she joined us for the author Q&A for book club. And she's just so inspirational, I tell you. It was really fun to get the behind the scenes look at the inspiration for Steal My Heart, its cover, and how she brings in some of her own life into this book, which is actually an office romance between 2 lawyers, one of which is new to the office and who just happens to be the boss's daughter, and that's Henley in the story. She's our heroine, who Easton, the hero, has been assigned to mentor. He totally pegs her as like the daddy's girl who didn't earn her spot, but he is so, so wrong. When he finally sees her for who she is, they have to decide if they can put their past behind them and give a relationship a shot. This was only my second book by Laura Pavlov, but I can easily see why she is such a popular author for readers, especially in the small town romance space. I'm already anxious to get my hands on Easton's brother stories, who she introduced in this book, with like hilarious text threads, and to discover who the writer of the Taylor Tea is, which is this small town's own like Lady Whistledown column, which is a really fun part of the story. I'll admit I was a bit surprised by how much Henley and Easton started talking about their relationship history and sex lives when they just became colleagues, but the best part of the story for me was really learning about Easton's tragic backstory and how that unfolded and influenced his feelings for Henley. I definitely recommend Steal My Heart, but beware you will get hooked for the entire series. All right, after Steal My Heart, I was ready to jump into our February 2025 book of the month for book club to get our discussion guide ready, which is Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonham Young. And while I think you can read this as a standalone, I realized that I wanted to do a reread of Hannah's previous book, Out on a Limb, because the main characters for Out of the Woods are first introduced there. Plus, Out on a Limb was one of my favorite books of 2023, so it really wasn't a hardship to go back and reread it. And it just, gosh, it hit me with all of the feels rereading it a second time. I actually think I forgot how much I loved this book until rereading it again, honestly. So, first note, please go and read this book if you haven't. It's just so good and demonstrates how amazing Hannah is at her craft. And I cannot wait to talk about it with her in our author Q&A this month because I am a bit obsessed. So in Out on a Limb, our heroine Winnie, or Win McNulty, has a one-night stand with the incredibly charming Beau, a perfect stranger. And that one night changes everything because she finds out that she's pregnant. Now, I love this book for so many reasons, other than the fact that she brings such amazing representation to people with limb difference. I absolutely love how Hannah wanted to write about two people who love each other so much that they are able to change the negative thought patterns that they've held onto and embrace their differences fully. And that is what was written, or in the fact that it was written by someone who experiences limb difference herself, I think was just really, really special. Win and Beau's one night stand was pretty incredible for both of them in more ways than one. And the rest of their love story is them sort of playing catch up to those feelings that were sparked on that first one night and taking the time to finally admit to themselves that they found their soulmate on that one special Halloween night. When you have a great writing and wonderful characters in a book, you really don't need to depend on a lot of drama to carry the story. And I love that I was just along for the ride in this one, watching Win and Beau fall fully in love without any undue angst. Part of this story was the incredible friendship between Win, Sarah, and Caleb, whose story we now get in her new release, which is out now, Out of the Woods, and I just loved it as well. This book gives Sarah and Caleb's story, as I said. These two fell in love in high school and married at age, I think, 18 or 19. But now in the story, it's 17 years later, and Sarah is just kind of wondering who she is without her other half. One night at a fundraiser that she was organizing that went terribly wrong, Caleb does what Caleb does, and he steps in again to save the day. And she's sort of pushed to do something to help her find herself and attempt to get them out of the rough patch that they're in. And that is by going on a week-long trek into the woods for couples, despite neither of them being outdoorsy people. Now, first, let me say that it's really a rarity to get a romance book that focuses on a married couple because you think married couples already have their happily ever after. But those of us who are married know that marriages have their ups and downs, even for those who find their soulmate in the 11th grade. I loved that Hannah gave us a married couple, but with a storyline that wasn't already done before or tried and true, like only focusing on fertility or focusing on infidelity. This one focused simply on the fact that these characters were at a bit of a crossroads in their relationship. Sarah and Caleb are honestly couple goals, I think, because despite the hardship that had them trekking in the woods for the week, they are two people who love each other wholeheartedly and completely and who are willing to do the work and to communicate to make their lives even better. And I love how Hannah normalizes that even people who love each other to pieces, like have their ups and downs and need some outside assistance to get them through the tough time. Sarah kind of realized that couples therapy might not have been the way to go for them, but the week out of their comfort zone seemed to do the trick. So Sarah, I thought she was just like the wild and quirky friend, in Out on a Limb, but you see a really different side to her in this book. She's honestly a woman struggling with her purpose in life. She's sort of stuck in the space after taking care of and losing her mother, to having no direction but a husband who is her caretaker and rescuer whenever she needs it. And then there's Caleb himself, who was just frustrated that Sarah wasn't happy with her life, as good as it looked on the outside. But I think Sarah represents the woman in all of us who kind of find ourselves at a time and place in our lives when we've just sort of lost our way or simply want more or something different. This book, and I think every book by Hannah, is a must read. I highly recommend it, and I hope that you'll consider joining us in the She Reads Romance Books book club to talk about it on February 18th and again on February 24th with Hannah. I just cannot believe she's going to join us. I'm super, super excited and can't wait to see what she gives us next. Okay, I'm on a roll, I think, with She Reads Romance Books book club picks, because if you haven't yet listened to my last episode or one of my previous episodes, which was my interview with Tessa Bailey, then you might not have heard that her latest release, Dream Girl Drama, is going to be our March 2025 book of the month. Oh my gosh. You heard that right. Tessa Bailey is coming to book club, and I am trying really hard to be calm about it because I just love this woman's work, and she is honestly just super cool after talking with her for the podcast episode. Plus, Dream Girl Drama, honestly, is just the best. So I cannot wait to talk about it with you in the club next month. So I actually did a reread of the book in January because I'd already read it at the end of 2024. And I reread it in preparation for my chat with Tessa. And honestly, I didn't think that I could love it any more than I did the first time. But yeah, I think reading it a second time just made me fall in love with these characters even more. This book can absolutely be read as a standalone, as the brief cameos from the characters in book 2 of her Big Shot series only kind of make a brief appearance. But this one is about a professional hockey player, Sig Gaither, whose car breaks down and his phone dies, so he has to trek into this posh private country club to call a tow truck. And while inside, he encounters the alluring and beautiful Chloe Clifford, who is just this pixie dream girl who immediately captivates him. I mean, honestly, it just takes a few hours for this man to fall and vice versa. But when Sig finally arrives to meet his dad's new girlfriend over dinner, Chloe is confusingly also there because it turns out the girlfriend is Chloe's mother, who is engaged to Sig's dad, which means that his dream girl is his future stepsister. Dun dun dun. None of that is a spoiler. It's on the book summary. But now that the pair can't be involved romantically, and even though Chloe is this sheltered heart prodigy, she yearns to escape from under her controlling mom. So Sig's like, hey, come to Boston. I will help you. I will teach you how to be independent. And so he helps her move, sets her up in a place, and looks out for her while they try to keep their hands off each other. So ever since reading Fangirl Down, book 1 in Tessa's sports romance series, Big Shots, I have been obsessed with the series. And Tessa honestly just continues the goodness with Dream Girl Drama. It's a forbidden romance, obviously, with a hot hero who will do anything for the woman that he has fallen in love with pretty much at first sight, and who just happens to be a really awesome dirty talker. I mean, do you expect anything less from Tessa Bailey? And I swear, it has everything that I love about her writing because she just never disappoints. But Dream Girl Drama has the best meet cute because you could immediately sense, obviously just like them, Sig and Chloe's instant and forever attraction. I just wanted them to, since I knew where the book was going, I just wanted them to run away with each other and not have to deal with the blow that you know is coming when they go meet their parents. But that's what Tessa Bailey does. She hooks you right into her stories, making you feel instantly invested in her characters, flaws and all, and I certainly was with this book. Well, at one point I thought, oh my gosh, Chloe's taking advantage of Sig in her naivete. But honestly, the more that you read, you come to realize that it's absolutely not the case. She is a sweetheart and learns fast and wants to be independent. And Sig just gets so much satisfaction from taking care of her every need. I think the best part of this book, besides Sig and his thoughtfulness, was their intense chemistry. I just loved how they fought against it every time they were together, which was daily pretty much, since they couldn't bear to be away from each other. And that's just true love, I tell you. It was super, super sweet. I love this series. I'm so happy it's going to continue. If you're looking for a fun romance where the characters are just meant for one another and love each other from the start for who they are, then you'll love Sig and Chloe. Pick it up. Come talk about it with me in book club this March. You won't regret it. Okay, I have really talked about that book. So on to the next one on my list for January was Wild Love by Elsie Silver, because my local library finally got a copy. So I was super psyched. Go public libraries. I love you. I had actually put off this book because reviews were kind of mixed that I had initially read. But I'm so glad that I did read it and think that you should too. It is a brother's best friend romance at heart, honestly, where Forbes, he's this newly crowned world's hottest billionaire, is trying to set up a recording studio in the small town of Rose Hill. At the same time, a young girl sort of knocks on his door and says, "Hey, I think you're my father." And then his best friend's little sister moves back to town next door, the girl that he's always crushed on but never acted on it. So, what I liked most about this book, honestly, is the love that Forbes has for Rosie, the heroine of the story. He's just a good guy, and I liked his protective side. I do agree with some reviewers that Rosie took some time to warm up to. I think, when they were growing up, Rosie and Forbes had this sort of back and forth banter that they just fell right back into as adults. But at times I just wanted to say, grow up. You don't have to be this, like, I don't know, nitpicky to each other, I guess. But again, I think it was just their thing to kind of poke at each other. It's their sort of love language. Okay, I got it. But I definitely liked him more than her in this story. And I will say, I also think the summary, I think, is a bit misleading because I thought this would be also a lot more about his daughter finding him, which it is to a point, right? But the focus is really on him and Rosie, which was great. But there was so much that I think wasn't addressed when it came to his daughter. Like, there weren't any issues that you saw with her, like moving in with him, a complete stranger, right? Or if she had any other, traumas related to how her life has been in the past. But it's fiction, whatever. I did like how the story ended up, even if it was a bit light and in the background. But I am super excited for the next two books in the series because I think they're going to be great. And I think actually all of the series can be read in Kindle Unlimited. So that is a bonus too. Okay, moving away from small town romance, I went back to hockey romance for the end of the month with Peyton Corin's The Undone series, starting with Unsteady. Now, this series includes all college new adult hockey romances, focusing on the several hockey players on the team and their happily ever afters. So the first book, Unsteady, is Reese's story, the captain of the team, who had a really bad hit at the end of last season that really shook him to his core, leaving him struggling with panic attacks and PTSD whenever he attempts to get back out on the ice. And then the heroine of the story, Sadie Brown, she's a figure skater at the same college who finds him mid-panic attack, basically, one day on the ice and helps him. But she's also dealing with her own struggles, including a psycho coach, raising her two younger brothers, and managing her alcoholic father, all while trying to stay on scholarship in school. So she's just this heroine full of anger and just a lot on her shoulders. And she honestly just wants a physical release with somebody. But Reese isn't a one-night stand kind of guy. But the more that they sort of run into each other on and off the ice and learn about what's weighing each other down in their lives, their love between them really does blossom. This was such a great romance to kick off a new series that I know I am going to devour. One, because it's hockey, so I mean that's a given. But I can see why this book got so popular so fast, because it has everything you really just want in a college hockey romance. Let's see what else. So I think also what I loved about this book is that Peyton does such a good job of incorporating tidbits that will lead to the other books in the series, already hooking me on Reese's other teammates, which is why I dove right into my next book on my list, which was my advanced reader copy of Unloved, the second book in the series, which released February 4th. This is Reese's teammate and well-known playboy about campus Freddie's story. So the title alone was already breaking my heart and having me love these two wounded souls before I even began. Once I started, I read this book honestly in one sitting because I just didn't want to put it down. So while you have Ro and Freddie, the main characters in the story, in book one, this can be read as a standalone if you just want to dive right into the series with this book. This book kind of takes place concurrently with Unsteady, with some overlapping scenes, but now told from Ro and Freddie's point of view. It's senior year at college, and Freddie is on to academic tutor number 3 to help him stay eligible for the hockey team. So many moments, let me tell you, broke my heart in this book, but none more than the times that Freddie was teased relentlessly about his intelligence by Ro's on and off again boyfriend. Man, that guy was such a freaking tool that I wanted to reach into the book and punch him in the nuts for how he treated Freddie and Ro. Like one of those characters that you just hate so much. The way Ro helped Freddie, though, as his new tutor and stood up for him in front of professors and counselors was so satisfying, given how much that the college had failed him, given his need for accommodations because he had ADHD, dyslexia, and dyscalculia. But despite the academic hardship and his grief, his loneliness, and the way a certain other someone in the book preyed on him, his strength and his humor were so admirable, as well as his kindness to Ro. Now, Ro herself, she deserved a super sweet guy like Freddie after dealing with Tyler, the douchebag. It's narcissistic people like him and the way that they tear people down that make me just want to scoop up everyone in their path and give them a big hug and show them what they have dealt with is not normal or acceptable. While I was like dying for them to finally admit their feelings for one another, the slow burn was well worth the wait. I think some readers might say it's too slow, but I think I didn't mind it. I was just sort of along for the ride. Peyton, I think, has definitely made her mark on college romance, which is having its heyday. And if you loved, I think, The Deal by Elle Kennedy or Play Along by Liz Tomford, then I think you will really love Unloved. It's fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to end on that note. That wraps up my reading list for January. So many great reads and only just a few meh, so that is definitely a win. Already queued up for my February list are a few new releases, including Rebel Witch and Deep End, and hopefully The Charlie Method that I'm hopefully going to be reading soon. But I'm also going to be taking advantage of my Kindle Unlimited subscription and reading a bunch through that. So be sure to follow this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and join my email list so you will be in the know when my February reading list episode drops. I've also got more author interviews coming your way and some new spicy book lists, hopefully, so get excited about those. Thanks, as always, for tuning in, and happy reading, because life is better with a love story. That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.